good note of any questions that we have and make sure that we post answers to those questions that we have not been able to answer. We will be recording, so as I mentioned, we also have a transcript available. We have sent attached to the registration invitation documents in advance that include the Word version of the Government of Canada Workplace Accessibility Passport, as well as additional information. And I would encourage you to review those documents, as well as to visit our very newly posted page on Canada.ca that includes a couple of interesting videos about the passport as well as the passport itself. So we will ask everyone to mute their microphones, and while they're not speaking, when you are speaking, you can turn on your microphone and you can turn on your camera if you're comfortable. We there are various ways to interact with our panelists. The first is that you can post questions or comments in the chat, and our colleagues Clara and Sumia will be monitoring the chat. You can also raise your hand when it's time for questions and answers after our three segments of the workshop. You can also send questions or comments by email, and someone will kindly post the email address for the passport mailbox in the chat. Thank you very much. And so those are the ways that you will be able to interact with our panelists. So thank you very much. And it is a privilege and an honor to introduce Lee Cito Thomas. Every time I hear Lee speak, uh, she touches me deeply. And so I am so grateful that she has agreed to give us a traditional message. Today, Lee Cito Thomas is the director with the Knowledge Circle for Indigenous Inclusion. Lee, over to you. And thanks again for being here.
Thank you, Luna. Your words are so humbling. Well, first, I would want to acknowledge and give greetings and thanks to the Algonquin peoples as we humbly meet on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. I also want to share with you the distinctions-based principles of Indigenous peoples in solidarity and in spirit as we journey forward in actioning accessibility. So first, we'd like to acknowledge and honor the Inuit for sharing their IQ principles of relationship, which have been embedded in their folklore since time immemorial. And as you hear them, I'm sure you will see the solidarity in terms of what we share together. And that is to respect others, relationships, and caring for people. To foster good spirits by being open, welcoming, and inclusive. To serve and provide for the family and community. To make decisions based on discussion and consensus. To develop skills through observation, mentoring, practice, and effort, and to work together for a common cause, to be innovative, resourceful, to respect and care for the land, animals, and environment. We also want to acknowledge our Métis brothers and sisters whose guiding principles are to acknowledge God the Creator, to give courage, and to be of one mind, to make us righteous, thankful, and proud, and importantly, to work together. The Métis Giving Tree speaks to us working in solidarity, in honesty, respect, love, sharing, caring, courage, balance, Mother Earth, patience, strength, kindness, and tolerance. Within First Nations, we have long understood diversity and inclusion. Our medicine wheel is represented by the colors yellow, red, black, and white, each representing the four great nations that walk on Mother Earth, each bringing mental, emotional, spiritual, and gifts to humankind. We have a prophecy among First Nations called the Awakening, and that is when the earth is ravaged and the animals are dying, a new tribe of people shall come together on Mother Earth from many races, colors, and creeds, and who by their actions and deeds shall make Mother Earth whole again. They will be known as warriors of the rainbow. Today, we gather as warriors. There is a teaching among our peoples that persons with disabilities are a gift from the Creator to remind us of our humanity, as they teach us to love, have compassion, and be creative. People with disabilities inspire our people to stimulate creative ideas in order to make significant and meaningful changes to our world, and that's in order to progress our humanity. So now I want to continue with a Thanksgiving address, which expresses our appreciation for all of creation and its contributions. For it is said that our true purpose in life is to look after each other and Mother Earth. We have been given a duty to live in harmony with one another, and we give thanks to each other for our peace. We give thanks to Mother Earth. She gives us that which makes us strong and healthy. We give thanks to the spirit of the world, in other words, our humanity, to quench our thirst for knowledge and to purify our thoughts and mind. We give thanks to the plants as they sustain us through food and the medicine to cure our diseases and sicknesses. And we give thanks for the waters for our strength and well-being. The waters quench our thirst, provide food for the plant life, and are the source of strength for the medicines we need. We give thanks to the animal life. They provide us with food and by giving us peace of mind. We thank the birds as the songs they sing to help us appreciate our own purpose and serenity in life. We give thanks to the four winds from the four directions as they bring the change of seasons to help Mother Earth. We give thanks to the grandfather thunders as they bring medicine for protection and the rains that renew life. We give thanks to our eldest brother, the sun, as each day he brings light and warmth, ensuring life on Mother Earth. We give thanks to Grandmother Moon as she makes harmony with the cycles of women, as she determines the arrival of children. And we give thanks to the Creator for preparing all things on earth for our peace of mind. We give thanks for our breath, our life, and the gifts of all creation. And finally, we give thanks to each other, for each of us through our action and through our humanity to make a better world and place for all of creation. And so now our spirits are one. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you for sharing those values, the values of respect and compassion and creativity and the so important sense of humanity. And thank you for those messages.
Thank you.
We will now turn to our Deputy Minister, Yasmin Laroche. Yasmin continues to be a tireless leader, and if I may borrow Lee's expression, a warrior for accessibility. And she will share opening remarks for this workshop. Thank you, Yasmin.
Thank you so much, Luna, and thank you, Lee. You're a tough act to follow, and honestly, I could just listen to you all day because it's been a stressful few weeks in my life, and your words are like balm for my soul. So I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for your wonderful words. Um, I just want to welcome everybody and wish you a happy National Accessibility Week 2022. I'm so honored to be joining you today for this very hands-on, practical, interactive workshop. Today, you're going to hear about how we can build a much more accessible public service by using the Government of Canada Workplace Accessibility Passport. But I always want to begin by acknowledging where I am and where I'm sitting. And I am in my home office in Ottawa. And this is, of course, the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. And I love the idea that I get to be a warrior of the rainbow. I have to admit, there are some days that I get tired of fighting, and I think we all share that. And I think that's one of the things that we're trying to fix with the creation of this passport is to make it less of a fight, to get the inclusion and the accommodations that we should be able to expect in any work environment. And I want to go back to something that Lee said, because what I really take away from all of those philosophies, from all of our Indigenous peoples, is this profound and fundamental respect for difference and a recognition that difference brings value. And out of that difference, we learn to respect and collaborate with each other. And I love your closing thoughts that we are here as one to make a better world for all creation. And really, that's at the heart of what we're trying to do when it comes to accessibility. It's why my office was created. It was all about getting ready so that the public service could meet or exceed the requirements of the Accessible Canada Act. And our strategy, which is called Nothing Without Us, and was created, built up with the words and the wisdom and the input of people with lived experience of disability, it created our vision to become the most accessible and inclusive public service in the world. And of course, a huge part of this vision is making employment in the public service accessible, from recruitment to onboarding to development and talent retention. Let me just talk a little bit about the data because, we're public servants, we love data and evidence. So let's talk about that. We know that 22% of the Canadian population lives with at least one form of disability. In March 2021, employees with disabilities made up only 6.1% of our workforce, even though the estimated workforce availability, and I'm using air quotes around that phrase, it was 9%. That's the floor. It's not the ceiling. It's the bare minimum. Because there are a lot of people who don't get counted in that number. To be part of that number, you have to be in the workforce. But when there are so many people with disabilities not yet in the workforce, I find that a problematic number, but it's the one that we use. And if you look at the 2020 Public Service Employee Survey, what we learned was that once on the job, so once they get through the barriers of hiring, then employees with disabilities face physical, technological, and of course, attitudinal barriers throughout their careers. In fact, only 60% of those who were surveyed said that they felt valued at work. Imagine that, only 60%. And 25% cited accessibility or accommodation issues as their barrier to advancement. So these data tell us that we need to do more to make our public service more accessible and inclusive. And our Government of Canada Workplace Accessibility Passport, which is really our flagship project. This is the tool I hope is going to make this a reality. I think it's a game changer because the passport allows employees to identify and document the workplace situations in which they find barriers and to propose or to request solutions to those barriers. It's designed to make it easier for employees and their managers to have a conversation about this because that can be complicated. And by focusing on the workplace environment, as opposed to the individual and what's wrong with you, it is intended to destigmatize that whole workplace accommodations process. So it's not about you or me as a problem to be solved. It's where the focus ought to be. It's the barriers that exist in the workplace that prevent you from achieving your full potential and making your best contribution. And you're going to have a lot more opportunities to hear about the passport over the next 3 segments of this workshop. Now, you know that the Government of Canada has committed to hire 5,000 new employees with disabilities by 2025. Well, one of the things that happened was to help Canada and Canadians navigate through the COVID-19 pandemic. Federal Public Service hired rather a lot of new employees. But the data that we've seen indicate that people with disabilities represented a very small percentage of these new hires, about 3.2%. I really think we have an opportunity to change that. I think moving forward together, our spirits as one, making a better world for all creation, we as managers, as leaders, can look for different sources of talent. We can recognize the value of a difference in lived experience, in ways of thinking, in ways of problem solving. If we can look to how we are eliminating systemic barriers in our staffing processes. I mean, take a really good look at some of our statements of merit criteria. And are we hiring people who've already done the job we're hiring for, or are we hiring for talent and potential to be great in a job? If we review our hiring practices to ensure that they make it possible for people with disabilities to become contributing members of our teams. Recruitment is just the first step. We need to create the right conditions for all of our employees to succeed and to be the best that they can be. From onboarding to team activities, inclusion means understanding and valuing that diversity of perspectives and facilitating the many different ways in which people can do their work. My goodness, if COVID has taught us anything, it's that there are many different ways to get the job done and be productive. And most importantly, as managers, as leaders, we can make it so much easier for each employee to get the adaptive tools or the support measures that they need to be productive and to be successful. Workplace accommodations that are in place in a timely and an efficient manner are key, right? They're key to a positive work experience. I try and explain this to people who don't live with disabilities. Imagine if you had to fill out a gazillion forms to get your laptop, or to get a phone to be functional at work. And people would say, well, maybe in 3 months, maybe in 6 months you can get it. Well, how effective are we going to be? How productive are we going to be? That's why, with more than 23 federal public service organizations, we've invested in the development and the demonstration of the GC Workplace Accessibility Passport. And as Luna mentioned, it is already available right across the public service as a Word document, ready to facilitate workplace accommodations. So please visit the new passport page on canada.ca and download that form. Because after this workshop, I know that my team is very keen to welcome more adopters of the passport. 23 departments is good, but wouldn't it be great if we could double that? At the same time, work continues on the development of a user-centric, that's really critical, and accessible online version of the passport. And fingers crossed, it's going to be available for testing by fall of 2022. As we move into this new unknown hybrid work environment, I really believe the passport is going to be central to ensuring that the workplace can be customized for individual workplace situations, whether it's physical, whether it's virtual, or whether it's hybrid. The passport is one of the many projects that our Centralized Enabling Workplace Fund is supporting. With these projects and our many, many partners, we're working hard towards our common goal to change the culture around accessibility and workplace accommodations. And it's critical that we not depend on a small but mighty little team like OPSA to drive that culture change. It really takes everybody. If we're going to if this is going to become a reflex, if this is going to become truly accessibility by default, it needs to become the everyday reality for all of our organizations, all of our teams, and for individual employees as well. So please help us spread the word about the passport. We would love to see it integrated into accessibility plans. In fact, I wrote to every deputy minister urging them to do just that. We want to see it integrated into talent planning, into onboarding packages right across the public service. So again, please visit the new passport website, download that document, and let's make this change happen. And let's live up to what Lee encouraged us to do. Let us make a better world for all creation, and let our spirits be one in this regard. Thank you so much. Back to you, Luna.
Thank you, Yasmin, for these wonderful words, this call to action, and the description of what the passport is and can be. And today we're going to take advantage of this workshop to talk about the practical ways in which we can create a more inclusive public service. We're going to talk about how to use the passport, what it is, and so that you can walk out of here with some key strategies that you can implement tomorrow. We're also going to talk about how organizations can include the passport in their accessibility plans. We'll then have a question and answer period, and hopefully you can keep those questions and those comments coming into the chat, and you'll be able to use also the raise your hand function in Teams. So we're going to move into section 1 of our workshop, and we're going to talk about how to create an inclusive workplace in the public service. And we're going to talk about that with 3 different perspectives. One from the manager, one from an employee with lived experience of disability, and one from a specialist in workplace accommodation. I am very pleased to welcome here Jean Labbé, who's the Director of Operations and Integration at Statistics Canada. Jennifer McDonald. Jennifer is the co-chair of the Public Services and Procurement Canada Network for Persons with Disabilities, and Myriam Lachance, who is the Director of the Wellness Services Programs at Health Canada. And we're going to hear from these 3 wonderful panelists their perspective on this first question. What can I do to contribute to an inclusive workplace in the federal public service? So I'll start with you, Jean. What can you do as a manager to create that inclusive workplace?
Thank you very much, Luna. Thanks for having me in this session. So for those of you who can see me, I'm a white male, Caucasian, in my early 50s with a bald head. My wife tells me I'm very good looking, but that's for whoever to decide. Okay, so keys to success to create a great environment for accessibility. First point is openness. Okay, openness is like creating an environment where people, whether it's the employees or the managers, feel confident to come and talk about their needs. It's not only like a 10-minute presentation every 2 years to a divisional meeting. It's every day. It's in everything. Like you have to talk about it so people know it's important. Like often we have to give ourselves the challenge to include accessibility in our day-to-day work. Second thing is listening. Like who better than the person with an accessibility need to talk about what they need to help them. So you have to listen. You also have to create an area where there's not going to be any prejudice. If you remember, like many years ago, and it's still like that, but mental illness was very much stigmatized. Okay, well, now we start to understand a bit more what are the impacts, what are the consequences, and sometimes it's like it needs a temporary measure, sometimes it's a permanent measure, but still we have to talk about it and we have to make sure that those prejudices are removed from our environment. We have to talk about it. We have to create an environment where the employee is going to feel safe talking about it. It has to be honest and it has to be constant. Okay, it's not a one thing, like a one-shot deal. It's constant discussion. And the last thing, short delays. We have to ensure as managers, it's our duty to ensure that it's not going to take 3 months to get something done. Okay, if somebody needs something, like we have to do our due diligence to make sure it happens fast. And on top of that, we have to keep our employees informed of the status of their requests. Okay, so at the end of the day, I think doing that makes the employee more satisfied, more engaged, and at the same time, as a manager, as a leader, I feel that I can become a mentor, I can become a resource for younger managers that don't know where to go or who to contact to get something in the accessibility world. Thank you.
Thanks, Jean, for those very practical points that you've made. I'm going to turn it over now to Jennifer. So, Jennifer, tell us what, in your view, you can do to contribute to creating a more inclusive workplace in the federal public service.
Thank you for this, Luna. And for those who don't know me, I am co-chair of the Persons with Disability Network for PSPC. And I am a person with a disability. I do have some mobility issues. And for those who can see me, I sit and knit during meetings because I have some attention issues. And if I don't do something like knitting during these meetings, my mind wanders. And then I get looking out the window and counting daisies or dandelions, or I doodle, or I read emails, or just whatever. So knitting helps keep me concentrated on the task at hand. Like many neuro different people, everybody has a different way of keeping on task. As Jean did, quick description, I am middle-aged. I'm well past the 50 mark, proud of my age, proud of my accomplishments. I'm fairly new to public service. I started in 2018, but I have a wide range of experiences to bring to my tenure at the public service. My experience with disability started many, many years ago. My father lost an arm in a farming accident, and he had had many other things that kind of slowed down his work. And I learned very quickly not to step in front of him and take over what he was doing, because that just pissed him off. I learned very quickly to be there to help open a door if he needed help opening doors. So that's what I do here at PSPC. I help open doors for others as they need them. I help build bridges on the gaps, and we all know that there's many gaps in our day-to-day life being a person with a disability, whether it's a physical or invisible disability. Part of the how I can make it, or anybody can make a better workplace, is to listen. Be open and honest in your listening. Be engaged in your listening. Ask honest questions. Don't just ask a question to ask a question. Ask a question because you really want to know. Remember, whether you're the employee, the employer, or a person who's in a position to help, one size does not fit all. And just because we use the word accommodation, I like productivity tool. Just because a productivity tool doesn't work today or works today does not mean it's going to be perfect for tomorrow. Because as we know, disability changes as we age, the same as everything in our bodies change. Our disability changes from week to week or year to year. Do not assume. So whether you're an employee, a manager, or a helper, don't assume that the person who you're working with knows what you're going through. As an employee, if you feel somebody who is reticent about asking questions, it's okay to prod them and say, do you have questions you want to know about my disability? Do you have questions that you need to know about what I need? Or do you just have general questions about how I navigate through life, whether it's with a physical disability or a invisible disability? And I don't necessarily call it ability, I call them different abilities. Different people are not bad, they're just different. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert makes a change as to how you approach the situation. Extroverts like to ask everywhere, talk about anything to everybody, talk about the butterfly net that they purchased last week at Bass Pro Shops to go butterfly chasing. Introverts like myself have a lot of skills that they have to learn in order to get that message out. One of the comments that Madame Laroche had mentioned was about the 9% workforce availability. We are nowhere near meeting that in the government service. We are nowhere being the go-to employer. The goal is to reach 5,000 new hires to the public service by 2025. At the rate we're going, they're going to have to move 2025 out several years in order to meet that. Yeah, we had several new hires, but we also had a lot of people leave. I know in the public service or in PSPC, we only have 140 net. They said we had 1,200 hires. We had more people leave than we actually had hired. If we don't take care of the people who are already working for us, if we don't build that relationship, if we don't have those conversations, if we don't provide those productivity tools, we're never going to reach our goals. On the plus side, Persons with Disability at PSPC works very closely with Digital Services Branch. And one of the complaints that they get often is there's nobody to help with the digital accessibility tools. There's nobody who has the time or the empathy to spend time helping a person get through them. DSB has scrubbed through their finances and found money to hire 3 people dedicated to PSPC's digital accessibility tool network. So kind of like if you want to have help with digital accessibility tools, press 9. These are all steps in the right direction. These are all conversations that have happened between employer, employee, managers, supervisors, helpers, and the networks. There's networks all across the government. I'm not different from you. I'm different like you. My biggest takeaway is have that conversation, be open, honest. If you feel somebody's scared of asking the question, open the conversation. A lot of people are scared of insulting somebody because they have a different way of looking at things, a different way of dealing with accessibility, a different way of mobilizing through crowds or work. Be open and honest and have the discussion. And I'll turn it back to Luna.
Thanks enormously, Jennifer, for sharing both your personal experience, your experience at work, and that sentence that I noticed in the signature of your email. I'm not different from you, I'm different like you. I really like that because it really summarizes in just a few words what it's all about. So thank you so much. And I'm now going to turn to Myriam Lachance. Myriam, Center has been innovative, has done a lot to take the necessary steps to improve workplace accommodations at Health Canada and Public Health Agency, both for employees and managers. Miriam, how can you contribute to making the workplace more inclusive?
Thank you, Luna. First, like you mentioned, I am Myriam Lachance. I am a woman with brown eyes and brown hair. I'm also a mother, a wife, a sister, a daughter, a friend, and also an advocate, an active advocate for change and leadership. So I currently work at Health Canada and I am the director of the Workplace Wellness programs. Like you mentioned, Luna, I'm responsible for the Workplace Wellness Service Center implemented in 2018 for employees at Health Canada and the Public Health Agency of Canada. I will say that the implementation of the service center as a single window access for employees and manager, the promotion of a yes by default approach, the use of a personalized case management approach, and also the use of the GC Workplace Accessibility Passport has resulted in a culture shift towards removing barriers to providing, in a timely manner, accommodation and accessibility tools and support needed for new candidate employees with unique needs and also diverse abilities. I firmly believe that everyone in an organization has an active role to play in making the workplace accessible, diverse, and inclusive. I sincerely believe that in order to foster winning condition and allow everyone to be successful in their work environment, it's essential to provide the necessary tools and to offer the same opportunity to everyone. This is why it's necessary to be to look for outside the box solution, to invest the time and the energy to support and ensure a successful accommodation process. And also, I think we need to focus our energy on finding solutions that are adapted to the needs of the person, personalized to their strength, their abilities, and adapted to the work context. Thank you, Luna.
Thanks again, Miriam. The model that you promote is a model that also has integrated the Government of Canada Workplace Accessibility Passport. And so you've created a real segue for the next segment of our workshop, which is going to focus on the Government of Canada Workplace Accessibility Passport. As Yasmin Laroche indicated, it is one of the key initiatives of the Office of Public Service Accessibility. We have built with our early adopters, a community of organizations and people who have experimented with the passport. The passport is available now, and I would strongly encourage everyone to go to our GCpedia page, the Accessibility Hub, and also to our newly published Canada.ca page for resources around the passport. But today, it's a pleasure to introduce members of the passport team who are going to answer some key questions about the passport. So first, Adiki Puplampu. Adiki, recently joined us as a master student in communications. I'm sure I'm not quoting her program correctly, but Adiki is going to answer some questions. Also, Edlyn Brutus Johnson, again, just recently joined the team. Rosalie McGrath, who is working most importantly on our digital passport solution, and Ashley Eads, who not only is the person who is responsible for supporting our community of adopters, she also supports our ADM steering committee. So these wonderful people, along with Clara Morgan and Sumia Ben Meder and others, are our passport team and our centralized enabling workplace fund team. So I'll start with Adiki. So Adiki, can you tell us what is the GC Workplace Accessibility Passport?
Yes, absolutely. So the passport is a tool that is created to improve the experience of persons with disabilities working in the public service. The fundamental objective of the passport is to enable employee success on the job by streamlining the workplace accommodation process for employees who face workplace barriers. The passport relies on a model of situation barrier solutions to support employees in accessing the solutions they need to work effectively. Employees identify the work situation in which they face a barrier and can then identify or propose the solution to that barrier that will allow them to contribute most effectively to the workplace.
Thanks, Adiki. Can I complete the passport now? Adiki?
Yes.
Great.
Adeline, you're muted, so I
Yeah.
will go ahead and respond. So yes, you can create the passport right now. It is available as an accessible and interactive Word document on the GC Accessibility Hub. So during the demonstration phase of the project, we focused on piloting the passport with our early adopter communities. But in this stage of the passport initiative, we are focused on cultivating an adopter community composed of any organization or agency within the public service that is interested in using and implementing the passport.
Thank you again. Edlyn, I'm going to turn to you and I'm going to ask you to tell us a little more about the passport. Where can I find it? What can you tell us about who should complete a passport?
Merci, Luna, thank you for your question. Yes, I am. If you are an employee who requires workplace accommodations, actually, we have created a conversation guide to help both employees and managers navigate discussions around using the passport. And like my colleague Adiki just mentioned, we actually invite you to go online on a GC accessibility website where you can download your passport, fill it out, and have a conversation, have a discussion with your manager. And again, I would reinforce the idea that the passport was created with employees uh, um, um, for employees in order to ensure they are having that conversation that will help them find a solution to be successful in the workplace. So we, again, I will repeat it, go on our website on our GCpedia Accessibility Hub and please have a look at the passport. It's accessible, it's interactive, it's in a Word document, which allow you to easily access it and download it. Merci. Thank you, Luna.
Luna, you're muted.
I knew this is going to happen at least once during these workshops. Thank you. So here we are. First of all, a reminder to everyone that the recordings of the formal parts of this workshop are going to be available. I think you'll find more information in the chat. So now I'm going to turn to Rosalie McGrath. Rosalie, can you tell us how to use the passport? So do I have to self-identify to complete a passport? And then perhaps I'll ask the second question, can you give us an example about a situation, a barrier, and how we can use the passport to document the situation, the barrier, and the solution?
Thank you, Luna. I'm hoping you can hear me. Yes, today is a good day, and I'm thanking everyone for today. So no, you don't have to self-identify. As Madame Laroche, our panelists from panel 1, and my colleagues have outlined, the focus of the passport is really on a conversation about the barriers you face in the workplace environment. It's not about identifying or not focusing on self-ID or focusing on the details of my disability, right? So I filled out the passport, and I'll tell you a little bit about my experience in a moment. But notably, the passport is designed to support your request and help your manager understand your productivity needs, as Jennifer said earlier. So what productivity tools you need in the workplace. In fact, the theoretical goal of the passport is to avoid any unnecessary medical disclosures of diagnoses, medications, or treatments on the part from the employees, so someone like me. So I would say once you go to the website and you access the passport, you'll see that it's divided into 5 sections. So here's what I did. I went in and I filled out section 1, which has all of my contact information and my manager's information. And then in section 2, I described and I explained how I interact with my work environment, both at home and in the workplace. And then I shared in the physical workplace, I mean, and then I shared my specific barriers. So, I described those and what might be difficult for me, like for instance, noise in the workplace can cause me to stim, as was, shared by Jennifer. So what I need then is some noise canceling headphones or a quiet space to work. So I can describe that in section 2, and I can describe some of the solutions that I'm already aware of, or I can work with my manager and someone like Myriam Lachance to find the solutions that'll work best for me and document them. So I think that that's really, what the purpose of the passport is, and that's how you can really, start your conversation with your manager in the first 2 sections of the passport. In section 3, you can list, summarize, or attach any documentation you may want to attach to support your workplace accommodation request. But we encourage you not to attach any medical information. Some examples of what I might have, attached were some informal assessments or recommendations from the ergonomic therapist who came in to adjust my office, and any adaptive devices that my previous managers have provided to me, any requirements I have in case of emergencies, because I'm also hard of hearing and I don't necessarily hear the alarms when they go off. So I need someone to come and tap me on the shoulder. So there you go. There's an example of what I can do. I can say, this is what I need in the case of an emergency. Please remember, though, that OPSA always advises you not to include any private medical information. As I said, no diagnoses, no medications or treatments. So once I've completed the passport, now what? What do I do? Well, section 4 is right there for you, because what it does is you should complete the section in collaboration with your manager. Its purpose is to record the results of the conversations you've had about the barriers and the solutions that you've documented, and it should clearly list and describe the adaptive tools or support measures that you've agreed on and that will be provided to you. So then both you and your manager can sign this portion of the passport And so it's documented that you have got these, your manager agrees to help you go through the accommodation process and put these measures in place. In Section 5, you can then revisit in 6 months. And in Section 5, you can record any changes that might have happened in that last 6 months, and you may need to update. So that's where you would do that. So, but what do you do? What do you do right away? Well, to save it, you have to save it. You can password protect it. So to do that, I'll just turn to my colleague Ashley to tell us how you can go about saving your passport information. Over to you, Ashley.
Thanks so much, Rosalie. So yes, once you've completed the passport, as Rosalie did such a great job of outlining how to do that, we recommend you store it where you can easily find and access it. It's also important to note that you're responsible for the information and that you save it in a way that protects your privacy and ensures that the location you save it is at the protected B level. One way to save it would be to save the Word document with a password protection. As the passport is employee owned, it's up to you to share the information found in your passport with others, such as your manager. We recommend that you review the passport regularly, as Rosalie mentioned, every 6 months, or when your situation changes.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thanks to my wonderful colleagues in the passport team, Adiki, Edlin, Rosalie, and Ashley, for describing the passport and how it is used. I strongly encourage everyone to visit OPSA's Accessibility Hub on GCpedia and our page on canada.ca to learn more about the passport. Let's just remember the passport belongs to the employee. It is, once you've completed it, it is your passport. You need to be at the center of any conversation that has to do with your workplace accommodations. So perhaps the word for managers and HR professionals, it's important to ensure that the employee remains at the center of these discussions. The employee decides who they share this information with, remembering always that people aren't going to guess what you need and the barriers that you face. So in order for your manager or those who can provide the workplace accommodation that you need, it is important to explain what barriers you face and if you know what the solutions are. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Stephanie Austin. Stephanie is the Director of Policy and Engagement with the Office of Public Service Accessibility. Stephanie is going to talk to us about how to include the passport as part of organizational accessibility plans. As you all know, the Accessible Canada Act requires that each organization submits an accessibility plan. For organizations in the federal public service, the deadline is December 2022. So it's time to think about those accessibility plans, and Stephanie's going to give us more information. And then we will turn it over to Brock Doucette from Infrastructure Canada. Brock has been working with us as Infrastructure is one of the organizations that participated in the demonstration phase of the passport and is looking at including the passport in its accessibility plan. So Stephanie, it's over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Luna, and thank you everyone for participating in this wonderful workshop during National Accessibility Week. Wishing you all a very happy National Accessibility Week. So I want to talk to you about 3 things today. The first thing is what every federal public service organization needs to include in its accessibility plan, as Luna said, which is due at the end of December to meet the requirements of the Accessible Canada Act. The second thing is what the Office of Public Service Accessibility has been doing in support accessibility leads across government as they develop their accessibility plans and where to find more information. And the third thing is how your department can integrate the passport in its accessibility plan as a way to remove barriers for employees with disabilities in the public service. So on to the first topic. According to the Accessible Canada Act regulations, accessibility plans must include information about how your organization is identifying, preventing, and removing barriers for people with disabilities in the 7 following areas. The first area is employment. The second area is the built environment. The third area is information and communications technology. The fourth area is communications other than ICT. The fifth area is procurement. The sixth area is programs and services. And the final area is transportation. And in your accessibility plan, you also have to state how persons with disabilities were consulted in the development of your plan. So for the second, I guess I'll just remind people to mute their line if they're not speaking right now. So for the second point that I wanted to talk about, what has OPSA been doing to support accessibility leads across government? Our Deputy Minister, Yasmine Laroche, talked about Nothing Without Us, our accessibility plan that we co-developed and released in 2019 during National Accessibility Week. The other thing that we have done is each year thereafter in December, we've issued a progress report, really documenting the work that has been done to remove barriers for people with disabilities across government. So if you go to our canada.ca/accessiblegc page, you'll be able to see that strategy and also see those 2 progress reports and be able to track the change that has already happened since 2019 in the public service. We also did a benchmarking study of workplace accommodations that is also available on that canada.ca page. It has lots of great information about the current state of accommodations and what we need to do to improve across the federal public service. Our colleagues in Public Services and Procurement Canada, the GC Workplace Innovations Centre, did a really extensive consultation with people with disabilities and different types of disabilities. And they were asking people with disabilities working in the public service what barriers they were currently facing and how those barriers could be removed in the built environment. So we should really look at this important information because as we start testing the hybrid work model across government, I think there are some really important messages that we already know about, barriers that still exist that we can remove. Another resource that is available to you is accessibility dashboards. The Public Service Employee Survey every year asks questions to people with disabilities across the public service and in your departments. And we know that the rates of harassment and discrimination, for example, among people with disabilities are much higher than their counterparts without disabilities. So the dashboards will allow you to track and measure change over time in your organization and in the public service as a whole. So some important data that you have available to you. Another resource is the Accessibility Self-Assessment Tool. So this is a tool that we launched last December, and it's to help accessibility leads identify and remove barriers in each of the goals of our strategy. And it gives you the latest guidance that will help you as you develop and implement your accessibility plans. We've also established mechanisms to share information and to share best practices across the Government of Canada. For example, the Interdepartmental Accessibility Community of Practice. It meets once a month, and we've led recently in the last 5 months a series of accessibility plan boot camps to help accessibility leads as they develop their first accessibility plans. All the information from those boot camps are available on our Accessibility Hub. which is a one-stop shop on GCpedia with all the relevant tips, guidance, events, and information about public service accessibility. So my final point is really about how you can integrate the passport in your department's accessibility plan. So we know that the passport can help identify, prevent, and remove barriers for employees with disabilities, and that these barriers can exist in all 7 areas covered by the Accessible Canada Act. So there are lots of places where the passport can be featured in your department's accessibility plan. So let's consider an example related to employment. So if we're imagining that we've recruited a new employee who may need an accommodation to be able to participate fully and equitably in the workplace, the Workplace Accessibility Passport could be included in every new employee's letter of offer, which would be a great action to put in your accessibility plan. And this employee could complete it before their first day of work, making their onboarding process much smoother. And this action could be tracked and reported on to show the progress your organization has made in your departmental progress report, which you'll have to publish by December 2023 and every year thereafter. So for each of the 6 areas covered, the 6 other areas covered under the ACA, let's think together about how the accessibility passport could be used, and feel free to pop any of your ideas in the chat or share them with us via email, because we'd love to share best practices with all of our colleagues across government. So looking at one more example for communication other than ICT, perhaps your department could use the Workplace Accessibility Passport to document the need for access to sign language interpretation services to allow the full and equitable participation of deaf employees at work. So the passport isn't only there to help individuals and their managers, it can also help organizations as they try to use their time and their resources more effectively. So that is what I have to share for today, and I'd happily pass it over to Brock.
Perfect, thank you, Stephanie. First, I'd like to start by thanking Luna and the OPSA team for all the help and collaboration that we've had with them over the past year, I would say, helping us launch the GC Accessibility Workplace Passport. So we started back in April 2021. So we joined as an early adopter organization of the passport. So we worked collaboratively with OPSA to move this forward. We presented to the Champions Accessibility Persons Living with Disabilities Subcommittee or Corporate Services Executive Team, and we ended up piloting it within the Corporate Services branch and the Subcommittee for Persons with Disabilities. So we launched it in December 2021, and with help of OPSA presenting it to managers first, because we wanted to make sure that we equipped the managers with the information that they would need to have the discussions with their employees, and then did the info session for employees. We ended up following up with emails, with information on our intranet, and more accessibility information. And following that, we've actually got responses from employees and managers reaching out for more information. So not only presenting it was key, but also following up with additional information and making it, creating more awareness for it helped for sure. And then in addition, we're looking to add the passport information on new employee orientation sessions. So I take what Stephanie said about having it included with the letter of offer, but then also sort of a second part where at the orientation, we're kind of like reinforcing the fact that the passport is available for them to help them. So I'm happy to say that infrastructure is looking to launch the passport to all employees, not only within one branch. So in May of this month, I guess, we launched the presentation to all managers to ensure that they were fully equipped to have those discussions like we did at within this corporate services branch. And in June, we're launching it to all staff, all employees of Infrastructure Canada. In addition, we're looking to integrating the passport into our accessibility plan because we believe that it's one of the initiatives that can be used by employees and managers to start the discussion on the tools that they'll be able to need to do their job. And we also believe it's super important to add it into our plan. Our department is currently growing, and we know that there's more needs to, there's more things needs to be done to make it more inclusive and an accessible workplace. So by adding the passport to the plan, we hope to create a more visibility for it, enable conversations between employees and managers. So employees, as soon as they come in, they are fully equipped to do their jobs without any unnecessary delays. So that's pretty much it. Over to you, Luna.
Thank you, Brock, for a wonderful example of how we can implement, how we can add the passport to the accessibility plans. And Stephanie, as usual, a wealth of information that we can use. I'll again remind everyone to visit the Accessibility Hub on GCpedia, where you can find a ton of information about everything that Stephanie mentioned and everything that we've been talking about today. So we are now at a point where we can take questions and answers, and my colleagues Clara and Sumya have been watching the chat very carefully. Sumya is going to be asking questions from the chat as well. If you'd like to raise your virtual hand, please do so by using the button on Microsoft Teams, and we will take